Mr. Pete Castellano. Congratulations. If he can come to the front to present Mr. Pat Zampetti for induction.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you all for coming. It's a great honor and privilege for me to be here to present my friend, Mr. Pat Zampetti, for induction into the Cadets Hall of Fame, class of 2016. And I want to acknowledge Pat's wonderful extended family that are all here. They're pretty much all here in the front row. Pat has truly earned this distinction through his outstanding contributions to the cadets on many levels. As a world-class player and instructor, as a leader among his peers, and as a key contributor to the cadets' return to world championship status in the 1980s. Pat was a snare drummer with the cadets for 4 years, from 1977 through 1980. For 3 of those years, Pat was the center snare and drum sergeant, and I marched in the snare line with Pat for all 3 of those years. Pat's unrivaled quality and consistent playing was inspiration to all of us who marched in those drum lines and who marched in those corps, as he literally set the pace for the corps that he marched in. Pat aged out in 1980, fittingly as Cadet of the Year, and immediately took his rightful place on the staff of the percussion section, where he taught the line from 1981 through 1984. Through Pat's dedication and character, he taught all of us what it means to be a cadet. Pat led by example, both on and off the field. Pat was always prepared and always gave every ounce of himself on the field. But off the field is just as important. Pat took the time to tend to his flock, lending a hand or a kind word wherever it was needed. Pat showed genuine compassion for others and particular concern for the youngest members of the Corps. Pat also helped with everything that needed to be done, from giving folks a ride to driving the equipment truck. I can tell you, whatever needed to be done to help the Corps, Pat did it. Pat was a fierce competitor and always wanted us to be our best. However, at the same time, he also displayed good sportsmanship. Always a fine gentleman, Pat was the first to offer a hand in friendship to those associated with other corps. Like everyone he taught and everyone he marched with, Pat made me a better person. With difficult years in 78 and 79, the Corps faced the real possibility of having to fold in 1980 due to lack of membership. I see some faces around who remember that difficult winter. So a strategy was devised to bring members up from down south to march with the Corps. Well, Pat literally drove the van to pick the folks up so they could come here and march. That strategy proved successful, and the cadets successfully and triumphantly returned back to finalist status in 1980. Now, that could not have happened without Pat Zampetti. The success of the 1980 Corps set the stage for the championships to come just a few years later in the decade. Pat helped the Corps in so many ways to endure some of the darkest days ever, and went on to lead the cadets back to the very top, world championship status, a place where the Corps remains today. So again, it's my honor to present my friend, Pat Zampetti.
Thank you, Pete, for your kind words. You probably know more about my involvement with the cadets than anyone, yet you still chose to say nice things about me. You have been a trusted friend for nearly 40 years, and I'll never be able to thank you enough for the support you and your parents have given me. Salud, paisano. I would like to acknowledge Director Hopkins and the members of the selection committee, fellow inductees Bill, Jim, and Colin, fellow nominees Robert, Marie, Ken, Wesley, Michael, Meg, and Ann, alumni, volunteers, staff, family, friends, guests, and the cadets that could not be with us today. I will start by thanking the people who wrote letters of support for my nomination. As Jim said, you don't get up here alone, you have a lot of help. I want to thank Hall of Fame members Willie Higgins, Michael Klesch, Bob Morrison, and Dave Shaw, Cadet alums Greg Millar, Rob Lehman, Ron Freck, Michael Sporos, Chris Gary, Adam Nyreen, Larry Cawley, Pat Petrillo, Larry Iznazik, and Lori Reddick Zampetti. Musician and educator Bob Chicky Gross, who's here with us tonight, and UVA students Dominic Delato and Rachel Yep. I would also like to thank some other people that helped me along the way. My lifelong friend, Patriot Cadet, and 27th Lancer alum, Tim Dolan. My first drum teacher, Mario Lombardo. Patriots drum instructor, Kenny DeStevens. Patriot and Saints alum, the late Jim Smith, who got me started in drum corps 44 years ago. My cadet instructors, Jerry Shelmar, Bob Devlin, the late Lou Rita, Jimmy Mallon, who's here today, Billy Kaufman, Eric Landis, Bob Craig, and George Hopkins. The late Doc Santa, who gave me the opportunity to teach the greatest drum corps in history. Fellow cadet drum staffers Tom Hannum, George Hopkins, Bob Gross, Mark Hollow, Steve Kiefer, Grant Davis, and Joey Gaudette. The amazing Cinzio family. Aunt Nellie, Cadet Hall of Famer Dave Helms, and Dane Dufour. Drummers Collective instructors Kim Plainfield and Peter Erskine. Oliver Ames band director Scott Trock. Former student, cadet alum, and UVA band director Bill Pease. The late David Welch, and the late Al Moffett. My grandparents, and my parents, who taught me how to treat people and the importance of family. I'm so lucky to have them here with me tonight. And our children, Joseph, Patrick, Emily, Catherine, Will, and our grandchild, Finley. Let me first say that I'm humbled and honored to receive this recognition. In the fall of 1976, my cadet audition consisted of playing some rudiments on a bar in the basement of the rehearsal hall, quite different from today's highly competitive audition process. When I arrived at my first rehearsal, I found that in addition to the brass section, more than 30 members of the color guard were also playing bugles. I became aware of something that still applies to this day. Innovation and change have always been key components to the cadet formula. During my 4 years as a marching member, the Corps had its ups and downs. Our greatest challenge came in 1980 when we all gave everything we had to ensure that the cadets would survive. For me, this included writing drum charts, driving the equipment truck, attending the judges' meetings, and being part of the group of cadets that drove nonstop to Mississippi to pick up the talented, hardworking people, the new cadets from down south that saved our Corps from extinction. 1980 was the beginning of our beloved director, Doc Santa's visionary 3-year improvement plan. His unorthodox motivational system, which included picking a color and letting it go, got us all to believe in ourselves and each other. 4 months after nearly folding, we placed 10th in the world. After aging out, I joined the percussion staff. It was George's first year writing the drum charts in 1981. Perhaps, as was once said of Mozart, we were guilty of playing too many notes. We won drumming exposure and placed 7th overall. Doc Santa's vision remained on schedule. In 1982, the drumline ushered in a new era of movement and movement for the percussion section and received the top score in musicianship. Jim Grimes' brass line with George Zingali's drill were unmatched, and the cadets placed 3rd. Did I mention that Doc Santa was a visionary? In 1983, George Hopkins became our new director. Our dream team staff included Hannum, Zingali, Sylvester, Twiggs, Prime, Van Doren, Morrison, and the Cesario brothers. The drumline received the top scores in effect and excellence, and our production of the Mass won it all in Miami. The cadets were champions again. 1984 brought us a second DCI championship with our West Side Story production, perhaps the most beautiful marriage of music and motion ever conceived on a football field. The drumline received the top score in effect. 32 years later, the show still stands on its own merit, a testament to its greatness. During my 4 years on the drum staff, I attempted to motivate my students, not with a carrot or a stick, but with a promise, to treat them with respect and trust. I've tried to maintain this approach with the hundreds of students that I've worked with since aging out of the Corps. While still a marching member, I began to design t-shirts and other graphics for the Corps, including the Garfield Cadet lettering for the Corps jackets and equipment truck. In 1982, I designed a new logo for the Corps. People just call it the G. It has remained in use to this day on everything from t-shirts to tattoos, and even the drill designs of Zingali and Sactic. Every cadet remembers the first time they put on a uniform, and I'm sure the current cadets are no different. There's a mix of individual pride and collective strength that comes from realizing you are part of a legacy of thousands that came before. There's been a lot of talk about the uniform lately, and my belief on the subject is simple. The best way to identify a cadet is not by the color of the fabric they wear. Look for the fire in their eyes, their work ethic, and the way they conduct themselves, both on and off the field, whether in victory or defeat. That is how you identify a cadet. My cadet experience has benefited me in my teaching, my career, and in my life in general. But without a doubt, the greatest benefit of my involvement with the cadets began 38 years ago on this date, August 4th, 1978, on a tour stop in Bucyrus, Ohio. I first held the hand of a young female member of the cadets drumline. 38 years, 4 children, and 1 grandchild later, I can tell you that I'm thankful that I did. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Lori, for always supporting me in all that I do, in addition to being a talented 5-year member of the cadets percussion section and the first female member of Holy Bass. She was the best wife, friend, student, mother, teacher, and grandmother that I could have ever imagined. I love you and thank you for sharing the journey with me. In closing, I'd like to remind us all how lucky we are to be part of the cadet family. Here's a bit of advice. When times get tough and you don't think you can go on, march straight and true to victory, for holy name shall always be. Thank you very much.